Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 23rd April 2020. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen, so let us start our discussion. Now, many of you have been inquiring about the release of the QIP videos, and we are excited to inform you that we have started releasing these QIP videos on our eLearn platform. Now, these QIP videos are designed to understand how to best utilize the Prelims Compass magazines or booklets. And these videos are very important, and because in these videos we'll be discussing the most important topics through detailed explanations, flowcharts, and question discussion. And apart from that, we also share the reasons of discussing these topics through the analysis of previous year questions, and also we give you a trend analysis of how important some topics are in a particular subject. So now the question arises as to how to get these QIP videos. So when you open this eLearn application on your browser, and when you click on the feed wall, you will find that the QIP videos are uploaded on your feed wall. And these videos are available for Rouse IAS students who have enrolled in the classroom program, and they are also available for those who have purchased the prelims test series of 2020. So in this line, you should go to your feed wall, and there you can see that the videos have been uploaded. And currently we have released the first videos of polity, economy, and environment ecology and biodiversity. And these videos will help you develop a perspective for covering important themes of the current affairs of last 15 to 16 months, and at the same time it will also help you to understand some important aspects of the static portions as well. So after this, let us look at what is the teaching methodology which has been used in the QIP videos and how it is going to be useful for you for the upcoming examination. Now, the methodology for teaching is based on simplifying the concepts, relating it with the right set of principles, and highlighting the way in which it has been asked in the examination, and also asking questions to test your understanding of the concepts from the perspective of the preliminary examination. And another aspect of these videos is that many important topics of the core subject are also explained, which may be important for the perspective of the coming examination. So if you go and watch the first QIP video of economy, it is related to the banking and the finance sector. And in this video, there is discussion on the basics of money, banking, and the money supply. Now in this video, various important legal aspects of the money have also been discussed, and these are some of the important core concepts which are important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Now you might be knowing that in the year 2018, a question was asked related to the concept of legal tender money. And accordingly, these QIP videos have been designed in such a manner that they try to strike a balance between the core aspects of the important current affairs. And as you can see, the question that was asked in the preliminary examination of 2018 has also been discussed here, and based on that aspect, a practice MCQ has also been provided to you. So regarding the approach of the QIP videos, you might have understood that it discusses the core aspects which are related to the current affairs. Also, it highlights the important points that should be learnt about the important current affairs, and in the end, the previous year questions, and based on them, a practice MCQ has also been discussed. Now we will regularly release these videos on the eLearn platform, and it is expected that you will get the best guidance for the coming preliminary examination. Now after going through the QIP video, if you have any doubt, you can always go and visit the forum and discuss your queries there. And all your queries will be answered by our faculty members. And this is aimed at increasing the engagement and clarifying the doubts of each and every student who is appearing for the preliminary examination. So all the best from our entire team, and do make good use of these videos for the preparation of the upcoming preliminary examination. Now this article on page number 8 reads that the Supreme Court in its recent verdict has said that both the center as well as the state government can fix the sugarcane prices. And in this regard, the Supreme Court has said that both the center and the state governments have the power to fix the price of sugarcane under the concurrent list of the Constitution of. Now, in this regard, you should be knowing that the central government fixes the fair and remunerative prices for the sugarcane. And in this regard, the state governments fix a price which is known as the state advised prices or SAP. And normally, these state advised prices are over and above the fair and remunerative prices which is fixed by the central government. Now, the petition was filed by the Uttar Pradesh Sugar Mills Association in the Supreme Court, and they questioned the power of the state government to fix a minimum price when a similar price had already been set up by the central legislation. So now the Supreme Court has clarified that both the central and the state government can fix the sugarcane prices. However, when the central government has already fixed the fair and remunerative price, the state advised price has to be over and above this fair and remunerative price. Now, in this regard, the sugarcane issue is a very contentious issue and is very important for us from the General Studies Paper 3 point of view. So, in this regard, let us look at what are the issues that are being faced by the sugarcane industry and also how is the sugarcane pricing done in India. Further, there is an ongoing issue at the World Trade Organization, and this issue was highlighted when the head of Brazil visited India on the Republic Day celebrations. So in this regard, let us cover all these aspects as to what are the issues that are being faced by the sugarcane industry, also what is the ongoing issue at the World Trade Organization, and finally we will look at how is the sugarcane pricing done in India or what is the sugarcane pricing policy. And several of these aspects can be important for us from the mains examination as well as from preliminary examination under the topic economic development. Now, we have already covered these aspects of the issue of India's sugarcane pricing at the WTO and also what are the issues that are being faced by the sugarcane industry. So let us revise these important aspects for us from the exam point of view from the previous DNS videos where we have covered the issue of sugarcane pricing that is being challenged at the WTO and also what are the various issues that are being faced by the sugarcane industry, and also we'll look at the sugarcane pricing policy. Now, the issue of sugarcane pricing in India is a bit complicated and we need to understand the various issues in this sugarcane pricing policy. So, the pricing of sugarcane in India is governed by a statutory provision, and this statutory provision is a part of the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. So, you should be aware about the act under which the pricing of sugarcane is done by the central government. And this can be a particularly important aspect for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And under this, the central government is authorized to fix the minimum price of sugarcane which is payable by the sugarcane mill owners to the farmers. And this minimum price is decided based on various factors. For example, the cost of production of sugarcane, then the availability of sugar to the final consumers at a fair price, etc. Until 2009, this minimum price was known as the statutory minimum price or the SMP of sugarcane. And it was decided based on consultation with the Commission for the Agricultural Costs and Prices or the CACP. Now, under this statutory minimum price regime, the farmers were not getting fair prices, and as such, based on the recommendations of the Bhargav Commission, a new clause was inserted into the Sugarcane Control Order of 1966, and it provided for sharing of profits in approximate ratio of 50-50 between the sugarcane mill owners and the sugarcane farmers. However, this clause which was inserted under the Sugarcane Control Order remained unimplemented. And due to this, the government replaced the statutory minimum price with the fair and remunerative price regime. And under this fair and remunerative prices regime, reasonable margins were provided to the sugarcane growers on the account of risks which are faced by these sugarcane growers. And also a sharing of profit was introduced under this FRP regime. And the clause which was related to the sharing of profits of 50-50 proportion was deleted under this FRP regime. And this clause was known as the reasonable margins for the growers of sugarcane, and it was to be decided based on the risks which are faced by the farmers and the profits that are to be shared. And presently, the central government decides this FRP or fair and remunerative price based on the advice or consultation with the Commission for the Agricultural Costs and Prices, that is CACP. Now, you can expect questions in the preliminary examination based on the information that we have discussed here regarding the sugarcane pricing policy. First is that the pricing of sugarcane is a statutory measure and it is taken under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. Again, the pricing is decided based on the advice of Commission for the Agricultural Costs and Prices. However, the prices are decided by the government and is not decided by the Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices. So the role of Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices is only advisory in nature. And again, under this FRP regime, the clause of 50-50 sharing of profits between the sugarcane mill owners and the farmers has now been deleted, and it has been replaced by the reasonable margins for the growers of sugarcane on the account of risks and profits. So you need to understand these points, and these can be important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Now, the issue between India and Brazil at the WTO is related to India's sugarcane pricing policy. And we know that in sugarcane pricing policy, India has provided for fair and remunerative prices for the sugarcane farmers. Now, this fair and remunerative price is categorized as a domestic support measure which has been taken by the government of India. And accordingly, such domestic support measures are categorized under various regimes in the WTO subsidy regimes. For example, some subsidies are considered as green box subsidies, then there are other which are considered as amber box subsidies, and then there are blue box subsidies. So these green box subsidies are those subsidies that do not distort trade or cause minimal disruption, and hence there is no limit on such subsidies that can be provided by various governments to its farmers. And all these subsidies have been provided under the Agreement on Agriculture of the WTO. Now, these green box subsidies include various measures, for example, the extension services, public stock holding for food security purposes, etc. And such measures which are taken by the government are not trade distorting, or at most they cause minimal trade distortion. And hence they have been provided under the green box subsidies, and there is no limit on such subsidies. Then there are these amber box subsidies, and these include measures to support the prices or subsidies which are directly related to the production quantity. And these are trade distorting subsidies, and hence there is a limit which has been provided under the WTO regarding such kind of subsidies which are provided under the amber box. Now, these amber box subsidies are subject to a limit which is known as de minimis limit, and it is known as the minimal support which is allowed under these amber box subsidies. Now, these are capped at 5% of the agricultural production for the developed countries, and these are capped at 10% for the developing countries. And then there are blue box subsidies which are similar to the amber box subsidies. However, there are no limits that have been provided for such subsidies which are provided under the blue box subsidies. And as we have read that these amber box or the blue box subsidies are those subsidies which are related to the production quantity, or these are quantity specific subsidies which are provided by the various governments. Further, under the Agreement on Agriculture, the developing countries have been provided with additional entitlements. And these can include measures to encourage agriculture and rural development, investment subsidies, and agricultural input subsidies. And these can be provided to low income or resource poor farmers. So the domestic support measures which are provided by the government have been categorized under these categories by the WTO under its subsidy regimes. And you might be knowing that in the preliminary examination of 2016, a question was asked related to these subsidies, that are the green box, amber box, and blue box subsidies. So in this, you should be aware that the limits have been imposed only on the amber box subsidies. And this can be a very important aspect for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Now, the issue between India and Brazil is that India is bound to notify the subsidies or the support it is providing to its sugarcane farmers to the WTO. And India has done it only once in the history of WTO, and that is in the year 1995 and 96. However, this support which was declared by India was below the de minimis level under the amber box subsidies. But the issue is that after 1995-96, India has not notified this product specific support to sugarcane in any of its domestic support notifications to the World Trade Organization. And this is the issue which has been raised by various members of the WTO regarding the support which is provided by India to its sugarcane farmers and which is not notified to the World Trade Organization. However, India has responded to these allegations by saying that the government does not procure any sugarcane directly under its fair and remunerative price regime. And as such, the product specific support which is provided under the amber box by the government is zero. Further, India says that The majority of sugar mills in India are under the private sector or are under the cooperative sector. And besides this, more than 75% of the public sector mills have shut down over the years. And as such, the cane which is crushed by the public sector mills is negligible in comparison to the cane crushed by the private and the cooperative sugar mills. And hence, India does not declare its domestic support which is provided to the sugarcane farmers under the notifications to WTO. And this is the issue that is going on at the WTO. And under this article, the various farmer groups have urged the Prime Minister of India to discuss this issue with the President of Brazil, who is visiting India on the Republic Day. So these are a few points regarding the sugarcane pricing policy and the issue between India and Brazil. And if you go through the prelims practice series, you will find that we have discussed various questions that have been asked related to the World Trade Organization. And as you can see, various questions have been asked in the year 2015, 16, 17, etc. And the questions that were asked in 2015 and 16 are related to the issue that we are discussing in this news article. That is, it is related to agreement on agriculture. And again, this is related to the various subsidy regimes under the WTO, that is the amber box, blue box and the green box. So do go through this video to understand the way in which UPSC has asked questions related to the various issues at the WTO. Now regarding this liquidity crisis in the sugarcane industry, you should note that the sugarcane farmers sell their product to the sugarcane mill owners. And these mill owners have to pay a fair and remunerative price to the sugarcane farmers. Now, however, there has been a liquidity crisis in the sugarcane industry, and due to this, the mill owners have not been able to pay back the fair and remunerative prices to the farmers. Now, let us look at what are the reasons for this liquidity crisis. So, here you should note that there is a demand and supply mismatch in the sugarcane industry. Now, regarding the demand of sugar, you should note that although the demand of sugar is increasing, the growth rate of demand is decelerating in the present times. And why is this growth rate of demand of sugar is decreasing? Because various alternatives that are available. For example, alternative sweeteners. Also, there has been an increasing health consciousness, and due to this, the global demand for sugar has been decreasing in the present times. Now, on the supply front, you should note that the production of sugar is increasing continuously for the past few years. And this has largely been because of superior seeds and better productivity of sugarcane per acre. So, in this regard, you should note that the sugar production in India has increased from 24.8 million tons in 2015-16 to around 32.25 million tons in 17 and 18. And it is expected to further increase in the year 2018 and 19. Now, although this production has been increasing, the demand has remained stagnant. As you can see that the demand is around 25 million tons only. So, due to the overproduction and stagnant demand, there has been a demand-supply mismatch in the sugarcane industry. Now, as the demand is not increasing and the supply is increasing, the profitability of the sugar mill owners is being impacted adversely. And this is one of the important reasons why the sugar mill owners have not been able to pay the arrears to the sugarcane farmers. Now, further, you should note that the revenue of sugar manufacturers depend on the price of sugar, and besides sugar, this revenue also depends on three other products in the sugarcane industry. And these products are the molasses, the bagasse and the press mud. Now regarding molasses, you should note that it is used in ethanol production. And we know that this ethanol is used in ethanol blending in diesel. Secondly, the bagasse is used in the paper and pulp industry. Further, the press mud is used as manure by the farmers. However, here you should note that the revenue generated by the selling of these three products is very low as compared to the selling of sugar. For example, ethanol contributes only 10 to 15% in the total revenue generated by these mills. So here you should note that the profitability of sugarcane manufacturers would have been high if they had got a higher price for all these three extra products from the sugarcane industry. Further, there is issue of pricing of the sugarcane and the sugar. So here you should note that the sugarcane prices are decided by the government. However, the prices of sugar are decided or determined by the demand and supply. Now, although the sugarcane prices are decided by the government does not buy this sugarcane from the farmers. And this arrangement is different from the minimum support price, in which the government itself procures the products from the farmers. For example, under the minimum support price, the government procures rice and wheat from the farmers directly. However, in case of sugarcane, you should note that the government does not procure any sugarcane directly. Now, as the government is not directly buying the sugarcane from the farmers, they sell this product to the sugar mill owners. However, as the sugar prices are determined by the market's demand and supply, and we know that the sugar prices have not been increasing and the profitability of the mill owners have been affected adversely. And due to this, the mill owners have not been able to pay a remunerative price to the farmers. So here you should note that the sugarcane prices generally move in upward direction because it is a political matter as well. So government always tries to increase the sugarcane prices. However, the price of sugar does not increase commensurately. And due to this, the sugar mill owners are not able to pay the fair price to the farmers. So it is in this line that the Rangarajan Committee in 2012 had proposed the decontrolling of the sugar industry and linking of the sugarcane prices with the market price of sugar, so that this structural imbalance of sugarcane prices being decided by the government and the sugar prices being determined by the market can be corrected. So now what are the steps that have been taken by the government to improve the liquidity condition for the sugar mills? So in this line, the government has increased the minimum selling price of white sugar from rupees 29 per kg to rupees 31 per kg. Further, the government has allocated mill-wise minimum indicative export quota of 50 lakh tons, which means that a minimum quota has been provided for the mill owners for their export of sugar. And as we know that there has been a mismatch in the demand and supply in the domestic industry, that is why the export is being promoted. Further, the government has extended assistance to the sugar mills at the rate of rupees 13.88 per quintal for the sugar season. And the government has also extended the assistance for other factors in the sugarcane production. And these include internal transport, freight, handling, etc. Further, the government has also provided soft loans to the sugar mill owners. Now, regarding the soft loans, you should note that these soft loans are beneficial for the borrowers. And in this line, the government has provided provisions for soft loans to the sugar mill owners. And further, the government will bear an interest subvention at the cost of 7 to 10% on all these soft loans. So these are few steps that have been taken by the government to improve the liquidity condition for the sugar mills. Now, after this discussion, you should try and answer this question from your mains examination point of view. And with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 14 talks about a report of the World Bank which is related to the global remittances. So in this line, this report predicts that the global remittances will see a sharp fall because of the COVID-19 crisis. And it says that in India, the remittances for the year 2020 are likely to fall by about 23% to $64 billion. Now, this topic can be important for us from General Studies paper 3 point of view. So let us first look at the important highlights of this report and what could be the impact on India because of this falling global remittances inflow into India. Now, the report highlights that there is impact of COVID-19 on the international migrants, and it is that it has adversely affected the income levels of the migrants across the globe. Now, a direct impact of this reduced income levels of the migrants across the globe is that it will lead to a reduction in the remittances flows, and which could lead to increased poverty and reduce households' access to the healthcare services in the countries to which these remittances normally flow. Further, the report highlights that the migrants face the risk of the contagion and also they face the possible loss of employment, wages, and the health insurance coverage. And this crisis could lead to increasing xenophobia, discriminatory treatment for migrants. Now, the countries that are likely to be most affected because of the falling global remittances are the low and the middle income countries. This is because the remittances as a share of the GDP tends to be largest in the poor countries as compared to the rich countries. And in the year 2020, the remittance flow to the low and middle income countries are expected to drop by around 20%. And this will stand at about $445 billion, which used to be $554 billion in 2019. And this is projected to be the largest fall in the global remittances in the recent history. Further, we note that due to the COVID-19 crisis, these low and middle income countries have been witnessing decline in the foreign investment. And as the foreign investment is declining, these countries will be more dependent upon the remittances that flow into these countries. And in the light of falling remittances, the low and the middle income countries are likely to be affected adversely. Further, due to the decreasing remittances, there is likely to be slower progress in the achievement of the sustainable development goals by these countries. So these are few highlights of the report, and in this regard, let us look at the remittances scenario in India and what are the causes of concern for India because of the reducing or falling remittances. Now, one of the important points that needs to be understood is that India attracts the world's highest remittances and they stand at about $80 billion. And India is followed by China in this regard. Now, this fact can become a very important fact for us from the preliminary examination point of view that India attracts the world's highest remittances across the globe. Further, these remittances contribute to about 3% of India's GDP. And the most important sources or the countries from which India receives these remittances include the United Arab Emirates, the United States of America, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman. So it needs to be noted that the only non-Gulf country in the top 5 sources of remittances is the United States of America, and all other countries are the Gulf countries. Now, one of the benefit of the higher inflow of the remittances into India is that it enables us to have a lower current account deficit. However, as we note that as the remittances are likely to fall, there can be adverse impact on the current account deficit scenario. Now, this report, which is released by the World Bank, is released in partnership with the Global Knowledge Partnership on Migration and Development. So, let us learn about this NOMAD, which is the Knowledge Partnership on Migration and Development. So, it is supported by a multi-donor trust fund, which is established by the World Bank. Further, it is a global hub of knowledge and policy expertise on migration and development, and it aims to create and synthesize multidisciplinary knowledge and evidence for the purposes like advising policymakers related to migration. It provides technical assistance and capacity building for pilot projects, and it also helps in evaluation of policies related to the migration. So this is the basic objective of this NOMAD. So these were few important points about the report which was released by the World Bank, and these are few causes of concern for India, and some facts were important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 8 is related to a Supreme Court judgment, and in this constitutional judgment, the Supreme Court has held that the 100% reservation for the tribal teachers in the schools located in scheduled areas across country as unconstitutional. So this can be important for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view under the topic Constitution. Now, reservation is a very wide topic and which is out of scope of discussion in this video. However, let us look at the observations of the Supreme Court in rejecting the 100% quota for tribal teachers in tribal schools. Now, this judgment of the Supreme Court was necessitated because in 2000, Andhra Pradesh High Court had issued an order which mandated 100% reservation to the scheduled tribe candidates, and out of which 33% of these tribal candidates had to be women. So this High Court judgment provided for 100% reservation for the posts of teachers in the schools which were located in the scheduled areas of the state. So this is basically talking about the 5th scheduled areas which are mainly tribal dominated, and this High Court judgment provided for 100% reservation to the scheduled tribe candidates for the post of teachers in the schools which were located within the scheduled areas of the state. Now, Supreme Court has declared this judgment of the High Court as unconstitutional, and it has stated that this High Court order was unreasonable and arbitrary. Now, in this regard, the reasoning of the Supreme Court can be important, and the first is that the opportunity of public employment is not the prerogative of few. So this means that it stands against the equality of opportunity which has been provided as a fundamental right under the Constitution. Secondly, the citizens have equal rights, and total exclusion of others by creating an opportunity for one class is not contemplated by the founding fathers of India. Secondly, it amounts to discrimination against other backward classes. For example, a 100% reservation to the scheduled tribes has deprived the scheduled caste and other backward classes due representation in the selection process. And in this regard, the court has referred to the Indira Sahni judgment, which capped the reservation at 50%. So in no case, according to the Indira Sahni judgment, the reservation can go beyond the 50% cap. And another argument was that merit cannot be denied altogether by providing reservation. And this is because the reservations kept under both the Article 16.1 and 16.4 together should not exceed 50%. So these were the reasons which were provided by the Supreme Court while rejecting the 100% reservation to the scheduled tribe candidates for the post of teachers in the schools which were located in the scheduled areas of Andhra Pradesh. So these are few important observations, and with this let's take up the next news article now. Now this article on page number 7 highlights the issue of post-retirement jobs for the judges of the Supreme Court of India. And in this regard, the authors argue that a constitutional amendment should be brought in which should ban the post-retirement appointments of the judges of Supreme Court. And that will be helpful in ensuring the independence of the judiciary and will also help in restoring the confidence in the judiciary. Now, the issue of post retirement appointments of the Supreme Court judges has come into light in the background of appointment of the CJI of India into the Rajya Sabha. And as such, there has been a widespread debate about such kind of appointments of the Supreme Court judges post the retirement. And this can be a very important aspect for us from the General Studies paper 2 point of view under the topic Constitution of India. Now, various aspects of the independence of the judiciary and all the issues like the conflict of interest, the judicial impropriety, what are the constitutional provisions which deal with the judicial independence, and what are some of the suggestions that have been provided by the Law Commission, etc., have been discussed in these two important DNS videos of 25th February 2020 and the 19th March 2020. So do go through these videos to understand the various aspects of the independence of the judiciary and how post-retirement appointments impact the independence of the judiciary. And some of the points that have been discussed in both these DNS videos have also been included in today's PDF. So do go through those points and they can be very important for us from the mains examination point of view. Now with this we conclude today's discussion. Now let's take up the question for the day.